All right. So, thanks for having me. As Lisa was saying, thanks for the great introduction. My name is Henry Velez. We're going to be learning about business resilience. I spent about 10 years in special operations, well, about 5 years in special operations, 10 years in the military. And a lot of the stuff that happens in the military and special operations field transfers over in the terms of business, especially in times like now. So, okay. A little bit about me. I'm a management consultant at Accenture. Accenture is a technology Fortune 500 consulting firm. They're multinational worldwide. We have about 500,000 employees. I work out of the Chicago office. I also work in real estate. I love real estate. Just the ability to build wealth, make money, have someone else pay down a mortgage, have the asset appreciate. All that stuff is just fascinating to me. And I've seen my parents make a decent amount of money doing that. So there we go. So I like this quote because a lot of people go through life and through business and they kind of just make plans and they don't think about how these plans might get torn up as soon as a crisis or a disaster or just a challenge happens. And then they expect people to come save them. You know, like, are you going to just sit down, let your business close down, and hope the government comes in with a bailout check and a stimulus package and you don't get it? So this kind of like puts it on you. No one's going to come help you. No one's going to come save you. You have to be prepared and you have to be willing to do what's needed to be done. So we talk about business resilience. Um, Something always is going to happen. Something always. It's not going to be a worldwide pandemic that shuts down everyone's cash flows for what, going on 3 months, whatever it is now. But for example, you could be running a sales firm and a bunch of rain comes down or snow or something and collapses the roof. And now you have all your stuff in there. You can't retrieve the computers. You can't retrieve documents because the building is structurally compromised and they just won't let you in. You can't retrieve your inventory. What are you going to do? You have 50, 100 employees, right? They're relying on you. You have bills to pay. So things will happen, and it's not always going to be as disastrous as this, but it could be a major contract that falls through, and you weren't diversified enough, with your contracts that this took down 80% of your business. So this is kind of about preparation and how special operators and stuff, when they meet the most extreme of challenges where the outcome isn't being broke or bankrupt or shutting down, the outcome is death if you fail, kind of how we apply this in the business world at a less extreme manner, of course. So what's at stake? If you guys are future business leaders, at least I hope you guys consider yourselves that. You're going to have employees, so their livelihoods are at stake. They have bills to pay. They have families to feed. Your livelihoods at stake. Maybe you took out a HELOC or a cash out refi on your home and pulled out the equity to start a business. Now you have your whole life savings in this whole thing running, and the government just said, "Hey, you can't conduct business," or something major happened and it's going to affect your business extremely adversely. How do you react to protect your livelihood and that of your employees? Safety and health. We see that right now. Is it going to be a health hazard for them to come to work? Could it could it end up in death? And careers are at stake, and your reputation, because people can be prima donnas and awesome and just be hot stuff, but when they're really tested in these times, when something really hits the fan, that's when you can see their character, and that's when the reputation of your business and your reputation will really be defined. And this is seen a lot, and it's seen a lot in combat, because you might have some guys that are great in training, but when something actually happens or they're actually stress tested, you need to know, or at least be able to be prepared in some capacity. So business continuity, continuing operations, that's what's most important when these things go down, right? So 40% of organizations without a plan uh, will go out of business within a few years of a major disaster. So you got to have a plan. Always have a plan. And 95% of major companies have disaster recovery plans, but some of them are never tested. So how good is a plan if it's never tested? Once you test the plan, you can see the gaps, the shortfalls, the people that don't really understand their job completely and would have completely dropped the ball had this been real, or systems that don't interact, technology that doesn't want to interact, like interface problems and all that stuff. And right now it's all about tech. So you have to be able to test that, stress test it. Can you stress test your finances? Do you have enough reserves to hold out for a complete shut off of cash flow? So you always want to test your plan. So like I keep saying, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. This involves knowing your business inside and out. You have to um, you don't have to micromanage, but you have to have a good overall pictures of how every different component of your business interacts. Um, People that don't war game or actually test the scenarios, they generally fail. Lack of leadership, like I was saying, when something happens, someone's going to step up. If no one steps up, then what's going to happen? So someone has to step up at some capacity, and I want that person to be you, if that's the situation, because that's when careers, reputations are defined. If the person above you doesn't step up and you do, guess who's going to get the promotion? Guess who kept the business afloat? Guess who kept that part of the company afloat? It wasn't them, it was you. So when it's time to step up, you need to know how everything works, all the systems. That way you can actually step up. Um, Lack of flexibility and change management. So change management is kind of what I do at Accenture, and that involves we roll out technology all the time, and sometimes we might roll it out to a firm, and it has older people there, not older, but I would say antiquated in their mindset, and you can't just put this crazy new technology in front of them and expect them to start inputting everything and for example, I don't know, managing the quality of something by inputting the measurements on this touchpad or something, and they're going to be resistant to the change. So having change management, having the ability to streamline the transition from one state to another with new technology in an event like this, it's very important. And if you just don't have any flexibility, you're not going to adapt. You're not going to overcome. You're just going to stay back, open a GoFundMe for your restaurant instead of opening up curbside pickup, partnering with a local distillery and selling hand sanitizer. I don't know. You have to adapt and you have to be flexible. So again, IT, technology. This is, I think, from 2018, that fact down there. So more than 9 days after disaster will mean bankruptcy within a year. So how scary is that? Because how many businesses has that just happened to in the US? A lot of businesses. So I don't know. That was 2018 or 2017. I think I saw that. We'll see what happens now. So up on the right-hand corner is Rick Rescorla. He was a colonel in the Army. And when you talk about preparation and planning, he comes to mind quite a bit. He was a director of security for financial services at Morgan Stanley after he got out of the Army. And he was there when the first attack happened in 1993, and they tried to take down one of the towers with a bomb in the parking garage, and that failed. So after that, he anticipated saying, "Hey, this is kind of like a big financial, institution in a big building with a bunch of financial institutions. If they wanted to attack, this is probably one of the locations that would be a prime target." So he was in charge of the well-being and security of almost 3,000 Morgan Stanley employees. So he ran time exercises. He would have them all drill, get out from their cubicles or whatever, get to the exits, and he would time them. He would tell people like, "Hey, you're going kind of slow," or like, "Hey, you're disabled, so this is a quicker way to get there from your location." And he made these drills happen all the time. 9/11 happened. Um, because of him, Morgan Stanley successfully evacuated almost all of the 2,867 employees. And Rick Rescorla here was seen on the 10th floor heading upwards to get out more before the towers collapsed. So having a good plan doesn't just save businesses, but it can also save lives. So evaluating your business, what do you actually have to kind of know? We're going to do kind of a high level touch, not really delve into each one of these. Um, so I don't know if they teach you guys in finance. It's more of a business thing. So SWOT analysis, strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So kind of get with your management, run this whole assessment, and don't like just discount opportunities, because when these events happen, a lot of businesses are able to take a lot of market share. Like in 2008, a bunch of businesses started up and just rode the recovery out of there. or took a bunch of market share. So right now we're going to have probably a lot of that, and you just have to be able to seize those opportunities. So knowing your business business in and out, critical business functions and processes. Obviously, you have to know that. You have to know what's critical, because that's what you're going to be sustaining when everything starts dropping. So you want to link those processes and the applications, and basically get your IT all linked and mapped out. Um, appropriate availability recovery strategies, and when you look at certain like processes that are going to drop in severity, you want to rank them by how long it can pretty much continue without the supporting infrastructure, because the infrastructure is what's going to go first. Um, so I'm not going to go through all of these, but these are some basic things that you can do to ensure you can transition. Mainly like IT stuff right now we're looking at. I mean, if you're manufacturing, that's a whole different thing. Maybe get a secondary, like a partnership with a secondary location, like a mutual agreement or something. Um, but yeah, and how much time till your money runs dry? How much do you have that can cover your expenses before you have to file bankruptcy or start defaulting on your loans? And risk analysis, what is the probability that something's going to happen in your business, and the effect and consequences of different aspects of your business? You can set up a trigger that kind of alerts you when that risk is about to be realized. And how do you mitigate it? Is there someone in charge of monitoring this risk? If it's very severe, maybe you should have a few people in charge, maybe the legal department, depending on what kind of risk it is. And you can always insure it for the risk, depending on how it is. But risk analysis, probably pretty important. We did this in the military all the time. Every mission we did, we understood there were consequences, and the consequences were all the way up to the whole team being wiped out. But we were able to mitigate it with certain controls. Knowing the capabilities of your staff and equipment, I would say, is extremely important. Can your equipment be repurposed for other use? We saw Tesla, Dyson, and Ford, I believe, at one point making ventilators, because we had a shortage of ventilators that was coming up, because the COVID patients they couldn't breathe on their own. Know what your staff can do, how much they can handle. Can they do someone else's job for a little bit? If you have to downsize. Um, and of course, whenever you think about what you do, especially we got one person in economics over here, second and third order of effects. Everything that you do has effects. Every choice that you make has effects. Like in your vendors, they might be affected by external circumstances. Some people don't put, they have primary, secondary vendors, especially if their primary vendor is in Japan or something, a place that has high amount of earthquakes. Supply chains, how can they be affected? So second, third order of effects. And then when you analyze your business, these are some of the things you want to look at. So right now, what we're seeing, lost, delayed sales and income. Expenses might increase, the cost of conducting business, depending on what type of business you have, of course. Contracts might be broken. Not everyone's going to be really like considerate about the situation. Like right now, people are being pretty considerate about it. People are allowing people to go on mortgage forbearance, for example. This is like the non-business side of it. But in a general normal time, if something just hits you, you might get hit with contract penalties. So you got to know that in the future and plan for that. And bonuses for meeting your performance, your production, all that stuff. Um, Customers leaving or being unsatisfied. If you have many competitors and you're, something just happened to you and you can't meet those demands, someone else is going to meet that demand, and they're just going to take up the money. No one cares what happened to you. That you just care they can't get the product, they can't get the service. But hey, you're X, there's Y. Y can do it. Oh, it's a little more. Well, at least I can get it, right? Fines, whether it be from the government or anything like that, or environmental or anything like that. Because some businesses deal with hazardous materials, for example, and stuff, and things do happen in that context. Identifying gaps as well, whether it be in the size, the geographical spread of organizational processes, or in your budgets. Identify those gaps, and you want to stress test this by doing running scenarios. So, and exploit. So some people have been able to actually turn this whole thing into a very advantageous financially, business type thing. For example, rolling out Teams. You guys know what Teams is? It's kind of like Zoom. So rolling out Teams, implementing it in major companies, that's been pretty profitable from a consulting standpoint because they all have to work remotely, work from home now. Accenture made this People Plus Work Connect. This was actually pretty cool, and it was actually, I don't know if they made a bunch of money off it, but what they did is they made the system that connects groups of people that were either furloughed or laid off, I think mostly laid off, and connects them with another similar company who has a shortage of workers where they can kind of transition batches of people to still remain in the workforce and put them in a similar company that requires similar skills and keep them working. That way they don't lose their livelihoods. Um, Paycheck protection program, these government, massive demand for that. So some consulting companies have come out and began facilitating that. Um, like unemployment applications through the roof. Their systems can't handle it, and people come in and they say, okay, we'll build you a system that can handle it. It's just going to cost you some money. So those are some kind of the opportunities that people will exploit. And then other people that have moved into other parts of the market, like I heard about this one distillery who started making a ton of money just taking their alcohol and turning it into hand sanitizer, which I mean doesn't sound too difficult. so so where does SOF play in? SOF is Special Operations Forces. So SOF teams are trained in doing unconventional warfare across different types of countries and different types of, from the air, land, or sea, all that stuff. They're trained in all infantry tactics. So the reason that they're kind of a good example is because the way they work is actually very like agile, and they can integrate into other parts of teams and stuff. So the standard operator starts off learning all the infantry tactics. Then they start learning languages in the culture of the region that they operate in. And they will generally specialize in a role. So this is a 12-man special forces team. And they have roles like operations sergeant. So they run operations, weapons. They handle all types of weapons, foreign, domestic, explosive, non-explosive, all that stuff. We have engineer sergeants. They can build bridges, blow up bridges. Medical sergeants. They can drop tubes in your chest, perform advanced surgical procedures, blood transfusions, aeromedical evacuation. They can diagnose and prescribe medications. They can do physical therapy, preventive medicine, public health. The only reason I know that much about that one is because I went through the Special Operations Medic course. And then communications, they just know how to use radios really well, I guess. So the cool thing about these teams is in the military, you have people that have different jobs, and some of those jobs may be in administration or procuring supplies or communications. And when you need help in those fields, you go to the person that does that job. But with these guys, the medic doubles as the admin guy. So he straight up learns the job of a regular Army person, how to process all the paperwork and everything. So the whole team can kind of work individually. They don't have to rely on external support. And they can also use that to scale up and integrate into other units. And yeah, I think that's it for that slide. So some of the cool characteristics that transfer into the business world and business resilience is when special operators go on a mission, they follow what's called the commander's vision, commander's intent. So they have a good picture of what the end state goal is of the mission. Because when they train, they get separated, the chain of command, the hierarchy gets killed off, blown up, injured, or something like that. But they still will generally have a good idea of what the end state is, so they can continue forward. So that's always good in business. If people aren't aligned with the same end state, then they're just going to go in all types of directions, especially when they're completely scrambled up. Communications plan and hierarchy, PACE plan, we'll go over that. That's pretty interesting. Mission essential functions as well. Everyone knows what needs to be done to continue the mission, the bare minimum to keep it running, like we went through before. Force multipliers. So that 12-man team is about the same size as a battalion, which can be multiple hundreds of people, like 200-300 people. that same team has the same effect because they can multiply force, and we'll go into that too. Cross functionality, they can do the mission essential functions that each job requires. They're trained in that enough to keep the mission moving forward. Now, like the communications guy may not be able to, I don't know, like amputate a limb or something if they really had to, or run like a code to start a guy's heart, but he can put a tourniquet on and start an IV. Life-saving things, mission essential functions. And then the medic can shoot a radio call, but may not be able to do some specialized stuff like, I don't know, shooting something up to a satellite or something. Redundancies, lots of redundancies in these teams. 2 is 1, 1 is none is kind of what they always say. And keep it stupid simple. That's the one I like a lot. When a plan is way too confusing, when everyone is anxious, they're going to forget everything. And then everyone runs the standard operating procedures, how they react to gunfire, how they react to an ambush, how they clear a room. Everyone is aligned as well in that sense, and they know how the other person is going to react. Same with really well-oiled businesses. They have flowcharts, they have standard SOPs, standard operating procedures. So people can generally they can know how someone from another department is going to react or look at something or assess something or continue in the process just by picking up a manual. And another thing that we're really good at is prioritizing and execute. We have these mission essential functions, and when people are getting injured and stuff and killed, some of these functions that you may think are extremely important get moved up and down in priority depending on the situation. For example, if your team is out there and you start getting mortared and you take a casualty and the guy's bleeding to death, and you might think, hey, mission essential function, I'm going to put a tourniquet on him and I'm going to prevent him from bleeding out. But then someone else says, hey, if we don't move from this kill zone, we're all going to need tourniquets because we're coming under fire from mortars. So prioritize, and you have to execute, because once you freeze up over there, you're not going anywhere, probably for the rest of your life. So you have to be able to do that quickly when a crisis occurs. Prioritize, and that's the only way you really know that is by knowing the processes in your business and knowing what those critical infrastructure things are, what the critical processes you have to keep moving, and knowing it inside and out. So we use this thing called the PACE plan. I still use it today because it's if something is so important that it failing could cause loss of livelihoods or people getting laid off or your life savings going away up in smoke. Why would you have just one plan or one way to react to something? So we use the PACE plan primary. So this is what happens under normal circumstances. We're using it all the time. That's the primary method of doing whatever. And this is generally tailored towards communications, but it can be applied to other types of planning as well. Alternate method, no minimal impact. It also can be used in our normal conditions. Contingency, pretty easy to understand over there. And then emergency last resort, it may be ineffective, inefficient. For example, something happens, primary, you're always using Skype. Alternate, you might have Teams. At one point, our company had both Skype and Teams. And a contingency, you might have to have your company buy a Zoom for Business account and quickly roll out and train, change, manage, the entire firm to move on to Zoom because everything else fell through. Or you might not even have a video teleconferencing platform, and you have to move from face-to-face in the office to Zoom. So you have to have all that planned out and what your plan of transition is going to be. Are you going to have not marketing? Are you going to have training materials done effectively so people can actually be comfortable using it, and you can maintain some sort of tempo or operations tempo, as we call it, throughout? And then emergency. So what if that doesn't work? Are you going to be doing conference calls via telephone, via cell? Like, what are you going to use? So you have to have this identified. And this can be done for many different things. Like, hey, I'm negotiating a contract. This is what I want: primary, alternate, contingency, emergency, whatever. So in a sense, have 4 plans. And this is expressed in order for communications. So you keep trying to communicate moving from the top to the bottom, and it can be applied to their planning, like I was saying. So force multipliers. So special operations, special forces teams right here. This is a team, and here is a battalion-sized element. So these guys have the same effect as them. And the reason being is that special operations in general, they're trained a little more in depth, learning the culture and language of other people, and they're set to go in and build rapport, build relationships with these people, and sometimes stacks of cash from the CIA help too. So they go in, they establish contact, they speak their language, they kind of know what they're doing. And right here is, you guys know who Hamid Karzai is? He was the president of Afghanistan from 2004 to 2014. I think this was a fifth group special forces team with some CIA embedded. And initially, when the war broke out, they sent a 100-man team, and they worked with what's called the Northern Alliance. And they fought the Taliban. They called in air support, um, coordinated attacks with the Northern Alliance with hundreds of people, at times even riding into battle on horseback, because the Northern Alliance, they don't have cars. They would go on horses. So these guys said, they're going to go on horses. We have to earn their respect. We're going to be alongside them on horses, riding into battle. So that was pretty interesting. So force multipliers, and they come in, they integrate into all types of units, and just they can train people and they can lead people. Cross functionality. So how is special operations like effective in that sense? So you can kill the medic, another person will be able to do the life reforming procedures. Okay, and the way that we ensure this continuity of operations is by doing things like what are called battle drills. So in combat, you just drill together as a team, and when you drill enough, it just becomes second nature that you don't even think, you just do. So basic first aid, this is in the special operations medic course. Actually, know this where this building is. Applying a tourniquet, everyone can apply a tourniquet. Everyone can stop one of the major causes of combat death, which is bleeding from an extremity to death. Mission and planning and operations. So special operators they know how to plan operations pretty much. You don't need the commander there. You don't need the leadership there to plan an operation. You can do it yourself. You've been trained. Basic tasks like radio use and reporting, anyone on the team can do that. And then some of those fall under critical tasks. And starting time training is that every month, on like a Wednesday, they would go out and drill these things. And everyone just kind of knows and can do the job of everyone else. So if one person is taken down or not present or taken out of action, you have many other people that can take their role. And that happens a lot in this. So, and some of the other traits for special operations that translate to business, lots of evaluations. So there's a selection process, and people are selected for strength, speed, stamina, aptitude. You have to be a little bit smarter than the average bear, and creativity and resourcefulness is a great thing. And you're not going to be going around getting creative by carrying, like a bunch of tires down the road right now. So the best way to exercise your creative mind is to read books, read a lot of books, because with that, that's more applicable than it is than this in real life. But you're given these extremely difficult situations that are controlled, so you don't get injured, and you have to use your head and just your strength, speed, stamina to continue. And when you're not given resources, you start to get creative with what you have, and you start to learn how to find dual purpose use or multi-purpose use for different things, which is really good to know and to have when you're in situations like this, or repurposing equipment that you have right now to make other stuff or provide other services. And resilience. We don't just quit when the going gets tough. We can't just quit. So that's another thing that kind of comes into the whole business realm. Work ethic, a little bit more work ethic than the average bear because you're just being washed all the time and you have to do it. So some stuff. So Accenture did like a 5-year plan to hire 5,000 veterans or something. And I thought it'd be good to just kind of like highlight some of the things that are brought to the table. So equanimity is calm under pressure, because you're just given all these challenges, like artificially produced challenges, and when an actual challenge comes up, it's usually not as stressful as what you were giving in the military or an actual thing that happened in the military. So cool, calm, and collected under pressure is a good trait to have, especially as a leader, because people don't want to be next to the guy that's freaking out. Never quit, obviously. Higher standards when you do things, and every task that you do is just like check marked. You tend to carry that over to other things. Never being late. I mean, I can't speak to all, military personnel with this, but I think that a good majority of them are more punctual than not, which I think is very important because it just shows respect, as well. And time is money. You don't want to take people's time, and you shouldn't. Leadership. You're put in situations through training or through real life where you have to take charge. They force you to take charge, and that's a great trait to have. So a lot of veterans, military personnel, when they're working in the boardroom, like they'll automatically take charge, and sometimes they don't even want to, but it's like they feel like they have to, which is kind of weird, from my perspective. Assertiveness, they're not going to wait to be told what to do. They kind of can sense what needs to be done a little better, and they'll actually go out there and do it. And again, this doesn't apply to every single military service member you're going to meet, but I would say more than half. So yeah, that's what I had today. Here's my information. But yeah, let's open the floor for questions or
Yeah, for
comments.
sure, for sure. Thanks, Henry. So yeah, we'll be moving into the Q&A session, but first I'm gonna run through the form, and we had one question that was submitted. So that first question is, how has being in the Army played a role in your professional development?
Um, well, yeah, that's a great question. Here, let me get off. Let me put the camera on or something. Hold on. Stop sharing. So, can you guys see me? Okay, cool. Yeah, in my professional development, I mean, just the sheer amount of opportunities that being in the military has given me, have been invaluable. Everything from basically getting school paid for, my bachelor's, my master's. Now it's going to be my second master's, and I still have like probably 3.5 years of education that I'm going to take. Um, all types of certifications that you can get because of your time in the military. Uh, Professional development wise, I would say the leadership aspect of it, um, it just turns you into more of a leader in general. And when you're put through enough situations artificially or where leadership is needed throughout 10 years, you're going to know how to react, in the future. So I think it gives you some more foresight and makes you more calm and collected because you know how to react to these things. So yeah.
Oh yeah. So I could read one question from
Yep.
Jacob in the chat. It says, "What is one of the larger takeaways that stuck with you from being in the Army, and how do you apply it to the work you do at Accenture today?"
So my largest takeaway was, and I was a non-commissioned officer, so I was in charge of soldiers and stuff, and I would always tell them this, and I think it's helped me a lot. But like when you do something like professionally or with school or whatever, giving like 100% every single time and trying to put out the best product you can make, going overboard with that, and having people say, "Oh, at first they'll say, oh wow, that guy like, oh, I don't know, what's the term? Like I don't know, teacher's pet, or he's really trying or whatever." But then after a while, if that's just your baseline, people just say, okay, that guy like knows his stuff, and I want him on my project. I want to work with him. I want to hire him, and don't let it just be when people are watching. But take that, and if they tell you to scrub a toilet, you make sure that the toilet's so clean, they're gonna go like, what the hell? you know. And if you just apply that consistently, and your effort may not be like the best effort, like or the highest standard, but if you're doing 100% of your effort every time, and you keep improving your skill set, because you will naturally, going through experience, going through training, going through education, it's just your product gets better. And when you do 100% every time, your product's always the best you can do. So literally, like, just do the best you can do. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. So, any other questions? So, feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question.
Hey Henry, you kind of talked about the importance of reading. Did you have any book recommendations? I see you got a lot of books in the background.
What do you like? Like, what kind of topics?
I like to read about, motivational books, business books, some finance and investing.
Um, Motivational. So, what is a good one? I'll tell you what I'm currently reading. I've been like on this economics kick. So, I read Basic Economics by Thomas Sowell. I'm reading The Mystery of Capital by Hernando de Soto. And that kind of, it's interesting because it ties into real estate. It ties in how property rights and stuff allow, I guess, value and capital to be created throughout an entire economy, and how in other countries they don't have property rights, or the government can, come and expropriate the property. So they kind of live in an extra legal sense, and they can't really build wealth and build capital and open up businesses and all that stuff. So it's interesting to see how just property rights, something that seems so mundane, can just have such a huge effect, and how like the legal contracts and all that stuff that actually has like a massive effect on the economy. Um, Motivation, I do a lot of audiobooks as well. And for a while I was on a kick of like people like persevering against like extreme bad circumstances. Um, what's the Ernest Shackleton, I think. I read this one a while ago. So basically, I'm gonna pull it up real quick. It's about a boat full of dudes, and they're going to check out like the North Pole, I believe, and they run the boat aground, and they're out there starving. They're like, okay, we just have to wait until it warms up, and once it warms up, we can the boat will dislodge from the ice and we'll float away. And it warms up, and the boat, instead of floating away, just sinks. So now they're stuck in the North Pole for I forgot how long, but crap. Hold on, let me pull it up. Give me 1 second. I just have so many of these on here. But it's a really good book on like persevering and resilience, because these guys are just hit with so many different types of challenges, internal and like from the environment and stuff, and just it's a true story that happened. And oh, here it is. No, it's not it. Endurance by Alfred Lansing. Endurance, pretty interesting book. So yeah.
All right, thank you. Any additional questions?
I mean, yeah, just kind of building off of that question by Ethan. You said that reading is one of the best things people can do just to grow themselves. Do you think audiobooks fill like the same role, or is there just something about just reading a book that you agree? Because I'm just curious.
No, that's a good question, because I think that too. It depends really how much of the information you retain. I've had this philosophical conversation with my buddy for like 2 hours one time, and I would say if I had to do one of the two exclusively, it would be reading. I literally just use audiobooks when I'm like going from point A to point B or commuting, because I just want to constantly take in information. And for me, it's been good. I can retain really well, and I've trained myself to increase the speed of the audiobook from like 1x to 1.25. I got to 1.5, but that was a little too fast. So 1.25. So I just blow through them pretty quick. It gets expensive, but you can get some stuff from Audibles, like monthly subscriptions. But if you're going to if you like just can't read, I would say audiobooks are a very good substitute. Podcasts are also good in whatever you're trying to learn, but just try to keep it very varied too. I don't just focus on one thing exclusively, like only economics, but I try to find other things that normally I would say, okay, this would be uninteresting, because once you start taking that information and you can connect dots, that's when you like really get creative and you can look at things and just like, for example, it was day one at Accenture and they were having us do these team building exercises. And so we had to sit down and we had all these squiggles and they're like, you have to find these things on a map. Here's your, I guess, document. So I grabbed, like, everyone's all confused, like, just a bunch of squiggles. So they gave it to me and I saw that. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, all right. And it was something I read when I was in high school, and it was like decoded or something. And it was Pig Latin. I was like, this is Pig Latin. So we just decoded it in like 5 minutes. And I mean, that like started me off with a decent reputation within those people. They're like, what the hell? So you never know when these random bits of information are going to come to use. And they do come to use, and they do come to use quite a bit. So, yeah.
Cool, thank you. Any other questions?
Hey, Henry. My name is Angel. I have a question regarding your point on change management. From a change management perspective and in light of the pandemic, what would your advice be for the change management plans of the seniors out there who are currently navigating through the job market? As a senior myself, I kind of have three options. I either try to be picky and choose a dream job that I want and try to pursue it as much as possible. Two, simply go to master's school, continue education as much as I can. And third, the plan would be to pursue a job that's not necessarily within my path, but also something that I can do, I'm capable of, yet I'm not as passionate as I would be compared to my dream job. What would your advice be for that?
Right. Right. No, that's a really good question, especially right now with the uncertain job market. And people are scared out there, like I'm also like, oh man, am I going to be around in like, 6 months or a year or whatever? But at the same time, so many people are getting laid off and stuff. And once the economy opens up, there's going to be, people are going to need to be rehired. And that's where it gets kind of tricky with like, hey, do I do something that I don't necessarily like and get a year on my resume and transition later? And I would say what I would do personally. Are you going to be taking on more debt to get this master's? Or what's the situation with that? If you don't mind me asking.
Let's say yes. Yes.
Yes. Okay. And what's the master's and what's the projected income?
I haven't looked into that yet, but it would be a master's within management information systems, so more
Okay.
software technology.
Yeah, there's always a demand for that.
Yeah.
I mean, have you applied so far?
Yes.
How's that been going?
Or sorry, not for master's school, but
Okay.
for
Oh yeah, for jobs. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And how's that been going?
It's
Finicky?
It's been finicky, definitely.
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, I would just keep applying by force, like force as many as I can. I mean, it takes a lot to land a job, even like in a booming economy, man. Like, it's not just like, okay, I submit 3-4 applications. Oh, I got, 3 interviews and 2 offers. It takes, even in a booming economy, it's going to take quite a bit. Some people might luck out, but I would say a lot of it is also networking. So all of this that you're doing, talking to people, getting out there, scheduling lunches and stuff, networking can help you quite a bit. If you think a master's is going to be more valuable for you, and you just kind of want to wait out this drop or whatever, and I would say, like, from a financial perspective, like, do you really want to take on that extra debt? I don't know how much it costs at DePaul or whatever, but that's another thing to consider. But I would just keep trying. And the whole thing about taking a job that you don't like, I mean, you guys are young. A year's a year, and a lot of people just have to do that coming out of college anyway. So especially right now. So, like, also the other thing is, like, you guys are young. You don't have kids. You guys are wasting so much time right now that once you guys have kids and are married and like just working, you're going to look back and be like, oh my God, how did I watch, freaking Tiger King 3 times in a row in a month, the whole freaking season? So, like, just get a job 9 to 5 that you don't like, go get your master's as well. And just, I mean, this is my mentality. Like, do you really need to have that much fun? Like, or do you need to get where you need to be as fast as possible and then start making some serious cash and then have fun? So weekends, like, what are you doing on the weekends? Go work on your master's, work the 9-to-5 job. Don't go severely in debt. Maybe they pay for it, and do both,
Yeah.
So that's kind of like my mindset when it comes to those things. Because I'm working 9-to-5. I got kids. I'm about to start 2 summer classes. Thank God they're virtual, because, like, dude, I would drive to you. I live in Buffalo Grove. I would drive to UIC before traffic, like 6 a.m. I was sleeping in my car in the parking lot, walk to work to get there by 9, work a whole day, walk back to the UIC, to UIC, go to class, be home by like 10 pretty much. And yeah, just got to do what you got to do, right? So, yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
No problem, man. Good luck.
Wait, you said you're from Buffalo Grove?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm from Buffalo Grove too.
Nice. What part?
I don't even know what part. It's like right by Stevenson. That's all I know.
Right by Stevenson. Okay. Well, I mean, I'm right by Stevenson. Well, I'm close to
Wait,
Stevenson.
I don't.
Okay.
Maybe my neighbor. Who knows?
I'm by Checker Road, the golf course.
Oh yeah, no, I know. I got you.
Yeah. Cool, man. Yeah, it's a good place to live. Don't like the commute though.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So.
Awesome.
Any
other questions? Yeah. Any other questions?
Cool.
No? Yeah. All right, cool. So we'll be wrapping up now. I want to say thank you to everybody for tuning in, and also appreciate your time, Henry, for giving us a lot of valuable advice, and also how being in the Army has really played a part in your professional development. So if you have additional questions, I'll make sure to post this recording on the Facebook page, and I'll also be posting Henry's contact info. So
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a great night.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.
Thanks, Henry.
Thanks,
Have a good
Henry.
night.